Today I'm going to be talking about effective herbicides for controlling weeds and protecting our ecosystems. Okay, so Colorado's definition of noxious weeds is any plant designated by a government agency as injurious to public health, agriculture, recreation, wildlife, or property. It's usually a non-native. It's an invasive plant that aggressively spreads and competes with native plants. Okay, so why are they a problem? It displaces native vegetation. Noxious weeds outcompete native plants for resources like water and sunlight and nutrients. It usually leads to a decline in native plant diversity and overall ecosystem health. It also reduces agricultural productivity. Invasive weeds can reduce crop yields and grazing capacity. It also can increase wildfire risk, which we all know is a big thing for living in the Rocky Mountains. Some noxious weeds, like thistles, can become highly flammable, which increases the risk and severity of wildfires. Erosion and sedimentation is also something that's considerable for noxious weeds. They usually have a poor root system, which can lead to soil erosion and increased sedimentation in waterways. They can be a threat to wildlife. Some loss of native plant communities due to noxious weeds can negatively impact wildlife habitat and food sources, affecting biodiversity. And the economic impact in Colorado, we put millions of dollars annually towards the fight of noxious weeds, and that's just from the state level. There's also people individually who are battling this as well. It can also have a human health concern. Some noxious weeds can be poisonous to humans, even livestock, can be detrimental to their health, could even be a loss of life for certain animals if certain things are digested and don't work.
Brittany, could you speak up a little bit more, please? A little louder, maybe.
I'm not very loud talking.
You can hear?
It's distracting with him.
Ask Susan.
You can close the door.
Partially close it. Without Susan, just partial would maybe help.
Okay. Some common noxious weeds here in Custer County. Leafy spurge. It is a perennial, which means that it comes back every year. It reproduces through seeds and roots. It flowers May through September. Its roots spread 17 feet deep, 15 feet horizontally, and the seeds can be projected from the flower about 15 feet out. The seeds are viable for 5 to 8 years. It does have a milky latex, which some people have a latex allergy to, so you have to be aware of that. Musk thistle, it is a biennial, so it comes up every 2 years. It flowers June through October, reproduces by seed, about 120,000 seeds per plant, viable for about 10 years. Scotch thistle is a biennial, so it also comes back every 2 years. It can grow up to 10 feet tall, flowers June to August. Seeds are small, about 8,000 to 40,000 seeds per plant, and they're viable for about 20 years. And then you have Canada thistle. It's a perennial, so it comes back every year. It reproduces through the seeds and through the roots. It flowers June through September. It produces about 5,000 seeds per plant, viable for about 20 years, and the roots are extensive. They go down 20 feet deep, 15 feet laterally. Diffuse snapweed is a biennial, annual, or sometimes a short-lived perennial. I guess it hasn't decided what it wants to be. It reproduces through seed. It flowers July through September, produces about 1,200 seeds per plant. It's viable for about 10 years, and it can actually dislodge itself from the stem and become like a tumbleweed, so it can spread a little bit further down. And then there is also common mullein, which is also a biennial. So it starts the first year as a rosette, comes back and bolts as the actual flower. It grows several feet tall. In the books that are there, it says 6 feet tall, but I know I've seen these way taller than that. It reproduces only by seed. I can't even remember how much. It's like 100,000 seeds per plant. Flowers June through October. They're still doing studies on it, but as of now, they know that it's viable for at least 80 plus years in the soil. So it's our lifelong friend if we like it. Integrated pest management. There's a variety of ways that you can go about trying to control and manage these types of species. Mechanical control is a type where you have your mowing, your hand pulling, cutting, chainsaw, Hydrox, however it is to eliminate the plant mechanically. And then you have your chemical control, which is like your pre-emergence, your post-emergence. You spot spray, broadcast spray, it really is just dependent on the type of area. As long as you follow the label is the law. Cultural control, this is kind of more used in organic and in different ways if we don't want to go about the other ways. Interseeding, using something like a competitive type plant towards the noxious weeds. Some things, you know, grow a little bit more competitively against these noxious weeds, and that can be our friend. Blue grama grass, blue stem, winter fat, those are all great plants to interseed with there and can help with certain species. Grazing management is another practice people use where we use sheep, cattle, goats sometimes to target grazing at certain peak times. And then biological controls, those are our insects, our fungus, our mites. They're proven to eliminate certain types of pests. We do have an insectary in Colorado in Palisade, and they do sell different types of species that will be host specific against noxious weeds. However, though, biocontrols work great. They just work very long term and they don't actually fully control, they just suppress. So they won't actually eat up their entire food source. So what is the best way to do it? What can we do that's good, fast, cheap? So we don't know if there's anything that's fast, cheap, and good. Okay. So pulling weeds, it's good, it's fat, it's cheap. We can pull them. It'll be a quick and easy thing. But is it fast? I mean, you're going to probably be working at it for a while, depending how big your property is. Mowing, yeah, if you already have a mower, it's going to be cheap. It'll probably be fast. But is it going to be good? Some plants it might not be that good for. Some of them might actually stimulate the root system or actually bring up more from there. So it could be fast and cheap. Grazing management. I know that that's not cheap and I know that's not fast, but it's good. I mean, you can always use that, especially if it's something you already have, you know. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Prescribed burning. I know that that's fast. You light something on fire and it's gonna go, and it's cheap. Fire doesn't cost anything. But is it always good? Probably not, especially if we're in a drought. And, you know, if it's something that it's actually going to make the problem worse, it might not be the best choice. Sometimes you can work on it small scale. Cover cropping, that's great. But I know that that's not going to be a long-term or a quick fix. So it's not going to be fast. And a lot of times it's not going to be cheap. You got to pay for water, you got to pay for seeds. You got to make sure everything works in the system for that to work.
Could I ask a question? What would be, could you give an example of a cover crop that might be used in the local Tri-County area?
I don't think I know anything for the specific area. It would be an extension office.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, no problem.
Let's see. There we go. Biocontrols. That one, so these are great. I mean, especially if it's something that where you can't reach a certain area. I've used these for places where in canyons you just can't get to. You probably don't want to get to. They're not necessarily very expensive, but are they going to be fast? Not really. You usually won't see anything start to become effective for at least 4 to 7 years, and that's if that colony does not die. So it's definitely not going to be a quick fix. It might be cheap, it'll be good, but it's not a fix all. Oh, tilling. Oh, that was the other one. Tilling could be great, especially if you already have the machinery. It could be quick if you already know what you're doing. Is it going to be good? Sometimes it depends on what you're using or for. Certain plants, just like with the mowing, it can actually stimulate that growth and make it a little worse. So if you don't know how deep to till in there, you could be making the problem worse. You could actually be making the seeds more viable in the soil too by disturbing that soil. What is another thing that we could do? We could hire a strong, intelligent, honest, hardworking person to do maintenance on our property. He's going to be fast and he's going to be great, but he's going to empty your wallet too. So it's not going to be the cheapest choice. So what can we do with everything? You know, it's kind of a mixture of all kinds of things. You kind of pick what resources you have and what your goals are. Could it be herbicides? You know, that's a preference. Why herbicides? Why people pick them? Definitely because it's quick and it can be efficient for a lot of different large infestations. It can target specific weeds without harming desirable plants if used correctly. It's cost effective, meaning that it can be less labor intensive than manual removal. It prevents further spread and saving long-term costs. And it can be complementary to the other methods. Sometimes you just kind of need a little bit of extra to the mowing and grazing and the biocontrols. Best practices for effective herbicide. Make sure that you mix your applications appropriately, calibrating your sprayers. Some people don't realize that when they look at the labels that it's per acre, not per gallon. Make sure that whatever you're using is calibrated accordingly. Sometimes that's how you get over applications, and you don't want to be wasting your money and you don't want to be putting anything out there that is unnecessary. Follow-up treatments, depending on all types of species. I mean, if you're going to be out there hand pulling, and you might be having to do it every couple weeks, you might have to do it every year. It depends on what type of species that is. And rotating herbicides. Some people want to use the same thing over and over and over. What happens is if you don't mix it up, or if you use way too much, which you're not supposed to, species can actually build a resistance to that type of herbicide. So like kochia. Kochia is a big one. People had used, 2,4-D and stuff for a long time, and now it's starting to build a resistance to that. So as farmers and landowners, and just, as a agency, an applicator, we're kind of running out of ways to get rid of those. They kind of are just becoming the natural thing. I thought this was a great picture because I had typed in healthy ecosystem, and this popped up, and I don't know if you know, but yellow toadflax is on the noxious weed list. So
what is it? Yellow what?
It's yellow toadflax.
Toadflax.
It's pretty. It's really pretty, but you can see that their hay field is inundated with it. Herbicide selection guide. Always check the labels for county-specific regulations and follow the label. The label's a lot. I'll say that a lot. Certain counties have specific requirements, like the San Luis Valley. They have their own special requirements. California has their own special requirements. So just make sure that you look through that. There's selective herbicides. This targets specific weeds. So, if you were just looking at hitting some of your broadleaves, there's weeds like thistles, dicamba. It's effective against knapweeds. This is, clopyralid, which is good for thistles and knapweeds. These are all selective. And then you have your non-selective herbicides. This is for something where, if you're going to just do a bare ground or something, glyphosate is usually, and you probably don't want to use something like that for around desirable plants, or something that is sensitive to something like that as well. Pre-emergent herbicides prevent the seed from actually germinating. Pendimethalin, Prowl H2O, it works in certain crops. It prevents the seed from developing in the soil. Imazapic, Batu, is good for cheatgrass and other annuals. They work great for annuals. They wouldn't work so much on perennials though. Okay, so choosing the peak timing to do all this stuff, it's very tricky because every plant's gonna have a different peak timing. I picked Japanese knotweed. We do have that in Canyon City. It's a list A according to the state of Colorado, which means it is designated for eradication. When you find it, we have to get rid of it. This specific plant will grow through anything. It actually breaks up foundations and asphalt. It's very hard to get rid of.
This is the stages of this
Yes,
Japanese
this is the same
knotweed.
plant throughout the stages. So we have here in the largest chunk of its life cycle where it's dormant. It predominantly lives in the soil in its root system during this time. So it's obviously dead looking on the top, but under the soil it's still alive. And then once spring, kind of summer hits, then it starts to shoot up leaves and starts to branch out. And then you have about winter, fall is when it starts to actually make blooms. It's very pretty, but it does destroy a lot of buildings and structures.
Because I remember.
Yeah, it will poke through a lot of different types of conditions. So where's the peak timing for just this specific plant? Well, the sweet spot is going to be out there. just that little spot there is when you actually can do it. So peak timing is very important. You hit it anywhere else and you're not gonna have very much efficiency there. So cheatgrass, I wanted to give at least one example about, this one. I think there's plenty of this to know that we've seen it. I found this out on the way walking in here. Cheatgrass is a winter annual grass. It grows in arid to semi-arid sites in either pre or post-fire conditions. It's highly adaptable to a variety of conditions. It can grow in drought, it can grow in water, grow in heat, cold, sandy soils, whatever. Cheatgrass also can increase fire due to its ability to grow quickly early in the year. It's one of the first things to come up. It's also one of the first things to dry out. We usually don't get a lot of moisture in the early times when this happens, so whenever fires do happen, you could tell from this picture here that fire crews probably couldn't get a handle on it until it did what it was going to do. So it has an abundant fuel source, so it rapidly grows out, competes in native plants, and it just absorbs all of the nutrients from all the other plants. So and I'll show you in the next picture too. This is kind of a site where it's kind of taken control, and you can even see the brush has kind of taken a hit from it too, because it's just absorbed all of the nutrients out of there. It's taken all the water, and you can see that the brush in the back there that's kind of away from it, it's still living. It's just that these plants, have taken over for that. And it's not a very palatable thing for cattle either, especially when it gets to seed. It can actually be detrimental in some cases for them, as they just can't digest it, and sometimes it gets stuck. So what can we do about it? Mechanically, mowing is not normally recommended for this. Mowing usually happens when it gets to a certain length. Once it's at this length, it's already produced seeds. If you mow this at that length, you have a couple different things that could happen. You could be dispersing seeds more, and you could actually be getting the roots to actually stimulate and want to produce a little bit more before the end of the season. You could till, but you just have to make sure you get there deep enough. 6 inches is usually about recommended. If you are going to try to collect the seeds, just make sure you bag them and throw them out. One other thing with the tilling too is it could also disperse some more of the seeds that are still in the soil. Cultural controls, interseeding with a seed drill is usually good. It could, like with some competitive plants like blue bunch wheatgrass, you can graze this early, but you have to do it before it starts to go to seed. They're usually bright green. I always think I have a beautiful patch of lawn coming in my yard, and then a couple weeks later I'm like, oh darn, I gotta get rid of that. So you could graze it when it's small and succulent, and it has some nutritional value when it's done, but after it gets to that point, then you're kind of limited to a couple other options. Chemically, you could do a pre-emergent, which would actually keep the seeds from actually becoming viable, or a post-emergent, which would be like once it's starting to grow, once the seeds have developed, it's pretty much done. Plateau, Amazopic, it's approved for rangeland and pastures. You just have to make sure if you're gonna be using a chemical that it is rated for that specific site and for that specific purpose. It's very important that people look at that. There is no biological agent that's available yet for this. I know that they're always looking for stuff. There's other countries that are always doing research too. So maybe someday down the road we'll find something that can help us there. So, personal protective equipment. So I have this guy here. I drew him up. So what to wear, it just depends. On the label, it changes for every type of label there is. So the requirements are going to vary. You don't ever want to go less than that. You could kind of go, more than that. But normally the stuff that I'm accustomed to is basically this stuff, which is gloves. And those are chemical resistant gloves. You don't want to use gardening gloves. You don't want to use latex gloves. Chemical resistant gloves are the ones that you want. Eye protection, if there's ever a gust of wind or if there's a drip, you don't want that in your eyes. I don't want that in my eyes. I don't want dust in my eyes. I don't want anything in my eyes. So I'm gonna work out if I do. Long sleeves and pants. And what this is
breathing it if you're spraying.
Huh?
You don't want it in your eyes. You also don't want to breathe it.
Well, I hope I wouldn't breathe it either. But
yeah, but I don't see a mask on there.
If it has it on the label where it's not required, it probably wouldn't be something that you would have to have concerns with that. Normally with these types of things, they're so plants absorb through their cell structure. And unlike humans, we don't have that ability to absorb like plants do. So a lot of them are scientifically, however the scientists do it, to where it's in the plant's DNA but not a human's DNA to absorb, if that makes sense. So it is something that, you know, that they looked at. If it does require a respirator or some kind of a suit, it's going to say it on there because it's, you know, for our safety. But the ones that I have, I mean, it's just very basic. And we do wear long pants and sleeves, and that's because if we do get it on us, it's a lot easier to take this off and wash that than to have to run inside and try to make sure that we're scrubbing up really good. If you have some of this stuff on, that's going to be easier to wash. Same thing with shoes and socks. I fight with my kids to wear socks, but I think it's a great thing that you could just take off and launder, and, you know, before you walk into the house and you spread it anywhere else, you can leave it outside and do what you need to, dispose of it, wash it. Hats are usually not recommended, but I recommend it because, you know, the sun's been hard on me. So, you know, a hat's kind of a good thing to do. And then if there's any other requirements that are in there, it'll say on the label. These are just kind of the basic ones. And this is for herbicides. If you go into fungicides and stuff like that, that's usually when respirators and stuff start to become on there.
So where do you find the gloves that you mentioned? What are they called again?
They're chemical resistant gloves, and you can find those at hardware stores, Home Depot, stuff like that, Lowe's. You can order them online. I buy them in bulk from a site called Gemplers. I get like 100 of them for the year. So, yeah.
Huh.
Yes. Let me see. Okay, so. Before going out to treat an area, it's good to double check the weather conditions for the next few hours. If it looks like the wind's going to pick up or it may rain soon, we may want to put off applications for another time or just, you know, wait a while and see. Some chemicals may even be restricted to certain temperatures because they become volatile. Let's see, the label will indicate what conditions are favorable and what are not. The label also tells whether the product can be used in certain areas and how close to certain landscapes it can be applied. We should always apply according to the label for the safety of our environment and the inhabitants. So yeah, and then make sure with storage that you store according to the label too. You want to keep it in the same container too. It'll say though on the label specifically how it's to be stored. It's going to be different for, you know, something that's right of way versus something that, you know, maybe might be for ornamental. So yeah, just make sure you kind of know the specifics for it for environmental safety. Reading a label, sometimes it's not the funnest thing to do, but it's important. It is a violation of federal law to use any pesticide in a manner inconsistent with its labeling. That's very important. Some people kind of overlook it and just think, oh, I'm gonna go and estimate something. Well, the label's there for a reason. It's for everybody's safety. So for this one here, this one is from Milestone. It's aminopyrrolid. It's also rated for rangeland use. So on here I have where it actually has the specific site that it's going to. For the plants controlled, the following weeds and woody plants will be controlled with the rates of Milestone indicating table 2. So table 2, you come down here and it says woody plants controlled. It'll have a whole list of different species, and you kind of want to make sure that that your species that you're looking for is going to be on that label. If you're not, then you're wasting money and you're putting stuff in there that isn't unnecessarily needed for the landscape. And then also looking to see if it says controlled. I'll say controlled or suppressed, and if it says suppressed, it means it's probably not going to go anywhere, but it's probably not going to get any worse. Controlled it will likely help you to resolve that infestation. And then you have your rate, which is ounces per acre, not gallon. That's very important, and that's why the calibration is so important. This one here, I just used the example common burdock, 4 to 7 ounces. That's not a lot. So depending on the equipment that you have, you know, we've had 25-gallon tanks, and that's a whole acre 4 ounces for 25 gallons, you know, that's not a lot. I mean, I know people
Oh.
want to throw a lot more in there. On this next slide, it's kind of a good comparison So remember, a little can go a long way. I use this picture here kind of as a reminder. Let's see, so like a washing machine, it can hold about 12 to 31 gallons, depending on whatever load you have. I looked at some of the laundry detergents that they had on shelves, and it's about a tablespoon per laundry load that's all you need. If you look at the caps that they have for filling them up, it's usually 10 times the amount that you need.
Right.
So if you fill up that whole cap, I mean, you're wasting all your money. But same thing with herbicide, you know, it doesn't seem like a lot, but when you put it into that context, it's just a little goes a long way, and more does not always necessarily mean better. If anything, it can build resistance to that type of species. It's unnecessary for the environment. It's a waste of your money. You know, there's just no need for it. So I think this is a good example of that, and especially, you know, that goes for anything that has a label on it. If you look at everything that has a label, you should follow that. I don't think our clothes will build a resistance, but I'm sure they probably get worn down more. Okay. So this is an example. This is from Huerfano County. This is kind of shows where I think the weed manager there, he went out in 2024 May. There was a hoary cress, which is white top, and this landowner was wanting to get his field back into pasture so that he could have cattle and things, but obviously the white top was just inundated in that field, and cattle do not graze on that. It's not very palatable, it's not very nutritious to them. So, you know, they wanted to start on that. He came back in August of that same year. You could see that it is gone and that there's very little sprigs left. And the reasoning for that is because these plants took up so much of the resources, all that was left were these little sprigs, which actually is kind of impressive because sometimes it'll just be nothing. But in this case, this would be great to have a follow-up of integrated pest management where you could put interseeding in there and do that in the fall and then have that winter snow and have all these grasses come up. And then you could just watch and see where everything starts to pop up. So this is kind of a good beginning to something of a story, of a project. This would be great to see, I think, in a couple years, see how that all works out. But yeah, I'm not sure. So what is the solution? So there's no silver bullet. Nothing's gonna be a fix-all, but we do have a lot of tools in our toolbox. We can do mowing, we could do pulling, we could do spraying, we could do cover cropping, we could do all these different methods. There's so many variety of ways that we can go about reducing weeds without having to pick one or the other. And really what it is choosing the method that works, match your financial situation, and also your effort levels for that. Everybody's gonna have a different story, everybody's gonna have a different project, a different goal, so you know it's gonna vary by every single person. Researching the weeds and the methods appropriate for the situation is very good to have before going into that. So what is the life cycle of the plant? What type of plant is it? What time of year is it? What kind of habitat is it? You know, these are all things that you need to look for before jumping into trying to navigate your way through the goals that you have in the property. Okay, so the worst thing you could do, any type of herbicide, if not using the herbicide appropriately. If you use it incorrectly, you run into a lot of different issues. If you fail to read the label, you can easily cause damage to waterways, soil, its microbiotic inhabitants, plants, animals, humans. It can even alter the pH and sodium levels of an area. So, you know, if you don't follow it, this could be, you know, something that happened. And I think what this was is somebody had sprayed, I think, some kind of a plant on accident, but they didn't follow the label, obviously. It must have not have been the right site for it. So yeah, follow the label. The label's the law. Okay. So what can we do as far as tracking all this type of stuff? EdMaps, it's an early detection distribution mapping system. It is a web-based mapping tool which can be used to document the distribution of invasive species across the U.S. It helps identify leading edges of new infestations. Any person can enter data into the system either using the website or a smartphone. The intent of this volunteer training is to empower the public to become actively involved in efficiently slowing the spread of harmful invasive species. And this doesn't just have to do with plant species. This is any type of pest. So, there's insects, there's plants, there's fungus, there's animals, snakes. It has it all on here, and anybody in the public can list it or track it and see. Let's see. Other agencies that we can reach out to, there's me, Fremont County Weed Management. I don't mind talking about noxious weeds or any other type methods of control. Colorado Weed Management Association, they are a great outsource for outreach and research and also trainings. They have their own website, which is great for trying to find all that information. The Upper Arkansas Cooperative Weed Management Area, which I'm also a part of, is more centrally based around, based around the southern Colorado, and we do work to get different type of funding. This funding that we have usually goes towards programs and different projects that we have, and it just kind of helps build an entire collaborative and continuous effort throughout. Consistency is the word I was looking for. Colorado Department of Agriculture, they have a website where they have different sites specifically towards agriculture. I mean, you could look on there and they have a whole list of identification for just noxious weeds just by itself. They have a pesticide applicators site where you can look and see anything that you need research about for trying to find a pesticide applicator, trying to find a sensitive registry if that's something that you're part of. There's all kinds of different details in there, and they even give resources of where you can reach out to. I put Fremont Conservation District here. I think Custer County has one. I don't know. So conservation districts are also a great resource to outreach to. You can go to them. They usually work with landowners, individual ones, and they have a lot of programs and can help develop a certain project or program for them. And they usually do a lot of outsource or research and outreach, different types of events. Palisade Insectary, this is also through the Colorado Department of Agriculture. This is in Colorado, in Palisade, and they have their own insectary out there, and they cultivate and have their own species, and they have different locations where they can actually get these. And if you ever want to call them, they would be happy to talk. Just set aside 30 minutes to an hour because they like talking bugs. USDA, or the Natural Resource Conservation Service, many places have an NRCS office somewhere. They work great for trying to find a big scale project, and they can get you funding for that. They also have, if you need to get like a grass plan for your grass seeding plan, they can help pick out the types of seeds that you need, or any types of plants that would work great out in your pasture. They can go through all those different things and build a program based around your goals. The Extension Office, there's all different types of entities all over Colorado. They have a great website, and there's lots of PDFs on there. There's different outreach events, and some places we have I don't know if you guys have a Master Gardeners. We have a Master Gardeners, which is through the Extension office there. And Master Gardeners, they'll work to actually go out and reach out to the community. They'll even do weed identification, and do some site visits to kind of check out like the plans and goals of landowners. Checking with local garden nurseries open to the public. Sometimes those people have the most knowledge that I know of. So if I'm stumped, I say go to Brady's. They're pretty smart. So go into some places. They just kind of get all questions of all sorts. It's a great place to go to if you're just trying to, especially for weed identification. They've probably seen it all. Let's see, questions. I know there's probably lots of questions. I try to go through it quickly because